Friday going? Pretty good. You know Friday's my favorite day.
Almost weekend.
It is. I get to sleep in. My wife likes to wake up at 5 a.m. So I was like, oh my gosh. How are you doing today?
Good. A bit tired, but.
Got any fishing tournaments coming up?
That's the older one.
Yeah.
Oh, national. Wow. Oh, good. That's pretty cool. Ready to get on meeting today?
We got a game after this, so we got
Oh, okay. Where?
Appointed point.
Oh, okay.
We'll see.
She didn't go to I was on Do Not Disturb.
Sometimes
She
it's
didn't. She's on the E-word, we call it. Text her friend. No, responded.
So then you
Oh, we're just moving.
You still want to win, what?
Oh, you were arguing.
Still want to win, but it won't affect us.
What do you want?
I think, I don't blame you. If I were you, I would just stay home tonight.
I'm so
You're
sorry.
on steroids. You have 2 big exams this week.
I'm good. How about you?
If you don't even have some of those guys, then like, I just feel like
Yeah, it is.
it's gross that I should not go.
The ground is gross.
Yeah. No fun.
Why would you want to go?
It's kind of like a more of a preview setting.
Yeah, not like a whole night situation.
I don't know. I'll go then.
Hello, how's your Friday going?
It's good. Yeah, I'm glad it's Friday. How's yours going?
Pretty good, I actually got some things done today.
Oh, good.
Me too.
Hey, Mark, are you making new friends here?
I have friends. Yeah.
She doesn't speak to me.
You're just sitting in the corner all by yourself. Good,
Yeah.
good. Seems like these are pretty friendly.
Yeah, they are pretty friendly, yeah. But it just helps that I'm on a team too.
Right.
Yeah. And then my roommate came with me to Sienna too.
Oh, okay, who's that?
Jenna Alley. She's business.
Is she's on lacrosse?
She graduated from Sienna with her bachelor's and she's getting her master's now.
Wow, master's in English.
I think. I don't know.
I'm learning.
But yeah, so it made it easier to transition with her here too.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
good.
Like, I don't
How are you? Not bad, not bad. Getting a lot of studying done?
It's been a busy week. I had a couple exams.
Oh, really? What class is it?
I had biology and then physics.
Yep.
Today.
Oh, okay. Are you in genetics or?
No, I'm doing it next year.
Oh, okay.
I know.
All right, sounds good. How are you? Anything this week?
Not this week, no.
You didn't want to see me?
If I was here, I would have like yesterday.
Whole day after such a call.
What's your name on my phone?
Yeah, I purchased it. I did a lot of it.
It's only for my business.
It's kind of hard.
Yeah.
Happy Friday, how are you doing today? Not bad, not bad. I know that you kind of changed your.
I know, I like to switch up.
A little bit better.
I normally sit in the same seat as like
It's not like
I don't know, it's kind of fun. Yeah.
That's how I used to do it.
Hard to do.
shouldn't have them.
I thought he wanted to smoke.
I won't work my magic.
I'll work my magic.
I like it. Wait, where are you going?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Let's see, what day is today? February 6th. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we're going to continue learning about chapter number 5. Anyone remember what chapter 5 the title is? What's it about?
Microbial growth.
Yes, microbial growth, very good. So last time, we learned about some ways of, various ways of controlling microbial growth. We learned about some different terms, like sanitization. I'm trying to remember what else what the other terms we, antiseptic. What were some of the other terms we learned? Sterilization on there, okay. And disinfection, very good. Then we learned about how those different control methods are employed at a number of different settings. So we use them at home, at work, hospital settings, water treatment plants, food production facilities, right? Okay. And today we're going to begin by learning about some of these different kind of antimicrobial procedures. So here we go here. So first bullet mentions that there is no single method that's best or applicable to all situations. So regardless of what method that we're utilizing, there's always some advantages as well as disadvantages. So those are good to know, so that we know which ones may be better suited for one situation versus another. So we have below that top bullet 4 more bullet items here that kind of list some of the different factors to consider when we select a particular antimicrobial method. So so we're going to see more slides that delve into each of these 4 areas here. So we're going to see slides about how the type of microbe, as well as how many microbes are present, can play an important factor. Environmental conditions, the risk of infection, and the composition of the item. So what do you think they mean by composition of the item? Any thoughts about that? What is the item made of? That's right. So some of the items that we've been working with are made of metal, like that wire loop, for example. Others are made out of plastic, like the Petri dishes. So depending on what the properties of those materials are, that can affect the use of our antimicrobial procedure. All right, so let's see some more slides about type and number of microbes. So again, these are going to play a factor in what kind of method we employ to remove microorganisms. So this slide here presents us with a list of microbial entities that are actually very difficult to kill. So let's look at those first two examples, endospores as well as cysts. So, both the endospores, which are made by, certain species of bacteria, and these cysts, which are made by various protozoa, they are designed to withstand, harsh environmental conditions. So think of these as like a dormant cell. So when these microbes encounter drought or winter, excessive heat, that under those conditions where they normally cannot survive, they will form these highly resistant, thick-walled spores. Again, they're either called endospores or cysts. And so by their very nature, because they're designed to withstand harsh environments and survive harsh environments, just by their very nature, they are very difficult to destroy. Okay, so that's an important consideration. If you want to ultimately destroy them, you have to take more extreme measures than what you would normally take. And then we have some other bacteria here, like the Mycobacterium and the Pseudomonas, and there's different species of these here, but Mycobacterium is the one that's that one's famous because of its association with the disease we call leprosy. So that's leprosy. That's the famous disease that you read about in the Bible, where people's extremities become infected, like their ears, their nose, for example. And then eventually, in extreme cases, those parts can actually deteriorate and fall off. So, it's kind of scary if you think about people walking around without a nose or without an ear. But as it turns out, that Mycobacterium is also difficult to kill because of its waxy cell walls, because it's waxy, hydrophobic. It'll repel hydrophilic substances, like chemicals, for example, that would normally react to other cells. There's a lot of different kinds of Pseudomonas species. One that we actually encountered last time was called the Pseudomonas aeruginosa. That's the one that's commonly a concern for burn patients. We saw that one diagram of the operating room where the Pseudomonas had actually spread from a burn patient, in all corners of the room. It wasn't just on the operating table, it was on the floor, it was in the corner, it was on the table. And the Pseudomonas aeruginosa is kind of interesting because it actually makes a greenish pigment. And so one way that you can identify an infection is by this kind of like this translucent green kind of color that appears on the skin. So green skin is not a good thing, right? And then later on in the semester, we're going to learn about these entities we call viruses. Viruses are viruses bacteria? Are they a kind of bacterium? No, they're not. Viruses are their own category, separate from living things. Viruses are technically not alive. They can't replicate on their own. They can only replicate within the cells of another living organism. And there's different kinds of viruses. Some of them have a membrane that surrounds them. We call that an envelope. And then there are some that lack an envelope. Later on in the semester, we're gonna work with some viruses in the lab. So that'll be fun. Get some more exposure, right? Different kind of things. Okay, so the point of this slide is that there's a lot of different kinds of entities out there in the world, and knowing what organism that you're trying to eradicate will help you to determine an appropriate control method. Okay, another important factor is like how many, like the numbers of these microorganisms are present that you are trying to destroy. I think you have a sense that when you expose a microorganism to like a chemical, that they don't die instantaneously. Death doesn't happen immediately. Death takes a little bit of time. So we're looking at an interesting graph here, where in this example, it takes about 5 minutes for, in this case, 10, let's say 10 bacteria to die, or at least to get down from 10 to 1. So there's this, so that kind of gives you an idea that, okay, it takes a little bit of time to kill these microorganisms, but then what this is also showing you is that it depends, that time is going to be longer if we have greater numbers. Okay, for example, if we have 10,000 bacteria, that will die, where 90% of them die in 5 minutes. How many will be remaining after 10 minutes? 100. Okay, so in other words, you spray your chemical, you think, okay, they're dead. No, they're not. There's still some that may still be alive if you start off with a really high number. Okay. So you have to kind of keep those things in your mind there. Okay, so this is a consideration, especially when in those hospital settings where they're trying to turn over rooms as quickly as possible for the next patient to come in there. It's like, and you may be assigned to like, hey, I want you to disinfect the room. It's like, okay, like do it right now. Well, sometimes it takes time, right? Okay, so we have this decimal reduction time there. That's the amount of time required to remove 90% of the population. Okay, so in this example, that decimal reduction time is how many minutes? Try again. I think I heard someone whisper it louder.
5.
5. I like that. Whisper it louder. Okay, 5 minutes, right? That's our decimal reduction time. All right, let's keep going here. Okay, so we talked about how important knowing the type of microorganism, and how many are present, and helping us decide how to effectively control that or remove that microorganism. Another important factor is are the what they call the environmental conditions listed on the slide here. So what else may be present on that item? Like a table, for example, where the bacterium is also located that could potentially affect or interfere with its eradication. So it could be things like body fluids. So, like blood, for example. Like you may have a bunch of like that contaminated operating room with the Pseudomonas all over the place, and then you have blood all over the room too. So blood can also, affect, physically block the interaction of your chemical agent with that microorganism. Same concept with any dirt or grease that may be present, especially grease because it's so oily, it's hydrophobic, and a lot of these solutions that are being used as disinfectants are hydrophilic. So that's an important consideration. Okay, temperature and pH. Here, let's look at this example here. The temperature. Okay, so we got, I think the M is for Mycobacterium tuberculosis. At 55 degrees, it takes half the amount of time, to be killed than at 50 degrees. So in other words, if you drop the temperature down, in this example, by only 5 degrees, it takes twice as much time in order to kill it. That's amazing if you think about it. And then you think about, well, for most, indoor settings, they have, the temperatures are relatively constant, but not all the time. I mean, have you ever walked into a room where it's like really hot? Or maybe where it's really cold? So it's not always constant, right? So we have to kind of, take that into consideration. That if it's, usually if it's cooler, it takes longer to kill these organisms. Okay, and then another important consideration is, what the intended use of that item is. Is it going to be used, internally within the body, or is it just going to be used on in contact with intact skin? Because remember, is intact skin a good barrier to infection? Yes, it is. Intact skin is an exceptional barrier to infection. So because of that, items that contact the skin don't have to be sterilized. It's still okay to have some microorganisms on them because of that risk that those organisms may pose is actually very low. But other than the skin, you also have mucous membranes. So those are like the internal linings, like in your lungs, in your throat, for example. Those are also barriers to infection too. So knowing that, items that come in contact with mucous membrane, it would be nice if they didn't have microorganisms on them, but they don't necessarily have to be completely sterile. But then the first item at the top, once you breach those barriers, you're in direct contact with internal, cavities and organs and tissues within the body, then you need to have sterile items at that point. So, think about, the operating room where you want to have, sterile scalpels, clamps, forceps, that kind of stuff. As well as on this slide they mentioned needles. Needles need to be sterile too. Okay, so it's important to kind of consider, what is the intended use of an item? How is it going to be used in terms of the body? All right, next slide gives us information about how important it is to know what the item is made of. So the idea being that that heat is a very common means of killing microorganisms. We talked about last time. That's one of the reasons why people cook their foods, is because that helps to remove microorganisms that may be present on things like, on meats or proteins or vegetables and things like that. But what this slide here informs us is that, well, if you're working with some plastic items, those may not be heat resistant, so you might not be able to use that as a means of disinfection or sterilization. For example, we're not exposing our petri dishes to a direct flame, are we? No, because the plastic would melt. It would burn. Okay, so it would destroy the integrity of that item. So because it's made out of plastic, we don't do that. Interestingly, petri dishes were not always made of plastic. Have you ever worked with glass petri dishes? No? Yes? Anyone in any of your classes, have you worked with glass petri dishes? No? Okay, well, okay, so that's an option, right? Let's see here. We're going to learn more about, moist heat. So that's like, okay, what do they mean by, what's another word for moist heat? Think of something else here. Something that's steam. Steam, that's right. So that's also very potent form of disinfection too. Okay. All right, so speaking of steam, which is moist heat, that's actually one example of what we call a physical method, physical versus chemical. So, physical versus chemical here. So we have, heat is very common. That's what we use. That's the reason why we're using the Bunsen burner to, sterilize our wire loops for when we transfer bacteria. I think we also talked about some of these already. We talked about filtration. We'll see more slides about that. We'll also see a slide about irradiation and high pressure. So more is coming about these kind of physical methods of control. And then the idea is, after you see all those slides, then we'll see chemicals, different kinds of chemicals that are used to control microorganisms. All right, so let's learn more about heat. Okay, so you probably have boiled water on a stove before and seen steam come off the boiling water. Okay, which is hotter, the steam or the boiling water? The steam, that's right. So I know it looks kind of cool, right? It looks kind of fun, but steam is actually hotter. So, we're actually going to use steam in a couple of weeks here in order to superheat our when we prep one of our slides and stain it, we're actually going to use steam because it has, not because it's going to sterilize, but because there's so much, more energy there. So moist heat is actually very effective at killing microorganisms, and because of that, that high temperature, you can actually cause proteins to unfold, and we call that denaturation. Moist heat is also used in pasteurization. So when you think about taking raw milk, which is in a liquid state, and then gently heating that up, you're actually also utilizing the moist heat to kill heat-sensitive organisms. Okay. Oh, we got ice cream. It always makes me happy. All right, so on this slide, we're going to see how you can use knowledge of moist heat, which is steam, and high pressure in order to kill microorganisms. So this is of interest here because this method also kills the endospores, which I forgot to put in red there. So if you have the ability, try and highlight these two words right here, where it says kills endospores. So here's a method for not just disinfection, but what's the term for total annihilation? Sterilization, that's right. Killing everything. All right, so let's take a look at this diagram here. So over here in this main rectangle here, try to imagine that this is a metal vessel here. And then there's an opening on the right, and this little locking mechanism over here is similar to what you see in those old-fashioned submarine movies where they had to turn the wheel to close the submarine doors. so this kind of setup here is designed to deal with high pressures. So the pressure is coming from steam that's added into this closed metal container, and then because it's closed and steam is being added to it, it increases the pressure that's inside. So if it wasn't for this locking door here, similar to what you see on a submarine, all that steam and pressure would normally cause a door to explode outwards. Okay, now because of those, with all the high steam, with all the hot steam entering inside, and high pressure, you can actually raise temperatures to 121 degrees Celsius or centigrade. Can anyone recall at what temperature water normally boils at? Normally it boils at 100, right? So inside of this autoclave, you can actually achieve temperatures above that which water normally boils at. Okay, that's cool. Okay, but let's see what is pictured inside this autoclave. It's a flask containing liquid. So in other words, let's say you want to sterilize a liquid. If you heat it to 121 degrees, what would normally happen to the liquid? It would evaporate, right? It'd boil, and all the liquid would evaporate, and you would get nothing. But here's the cool thing. Because this is pressurized, you can actually increase the temperature at which the liquid will boil at above 100 degrees. And that's made possible because of this formula down here. Anyone recognize this one? Yes? Okay, good. What class did you see this one in?
Chemistry.
What?
Chemistry.
Chemistry? Okay, good. Anyone know the ideal gas law? That's right, very good. Ideal gas law. P is for pressure. V is for volume. That's right. N and R are constants, so that they don't change. But T is for temperature. Temperature, right? Okay. So because N and R are constants, you have a formula where pressure and volume are related to temperature here. All right, so we're dealing with a closed system here, so the volume doesn't change. So that's effectively a constant. But now we have pressure directly related to temperature. So, because steam is being added into the autoclave, pressure increases, and that will cause the temperature at which that liquid will boil at will also be raised. So in other words, you can increase the temperatures to 121, but still be below the temperature at which that liquid will boil. Cool. Okay, and because it's, like why are we using 121? Why not 122? Or why not 120? Well, someone did some math here, and probably did some experimentations too, and discovered that's the temperature to kill the endospores. In other words, you don't need to go higher than that. All right, so when would you use this thing? Well, anytime you want to sterilize something, you use this. So, those surgical instruments, sterilize in an autoclave. Well, what about what we're doing in the microbiology lab? Don't you want to have sterile petri dishes and sterile media? Yes, and so the media that you are using in your petri dishes to grow your microorganisms, those were sterilized in an autoclave. All right, any questions about the autoclave? Okay. Well, some of you may have noticed that, that in the laboratory we've been working with, some water last time that was in bottles. Those glass pipettes, which were wrapped in that aluminum foil. And did anyone notice some tape on those items with those little hash marks on it? Yes? Okay, good. So what's going on with that? Well, the idea is that originally the tape looked like this. Originally it looked kind of like masking tape that painters use for edging and stuff like that. But it's not masking tape. This is actually heat-sensitive tape. So it allows us to know if the temperatures are reaching 121 degrees or not. Because under those conditions, then we'll see the parallel diagonal lines forming. So this is used as an indicator that that we're actually reaching the temperatures that we want to for sterilization. Okay, so we got that. All right, okay, so we talked about these autoclaves are used in the laboratories, at hospitals, dentists use these too, but they're also used in the commercial canning industry. So in other words, after fruits, vegetables, and other items are added into that can, and the can is sealed, then it's put into a large-scale autoclave for sterilization. Previously we learned that endospores are destroyed in the process if the process is working correctly. But remember I mentioned that there was an incident where the canning did not work correctly. Anyone remember what item that was? It was canned what? Canned tuna, that's right, canned tuna. So sometimes it doesn't always work. And so the endospores are not destroyed. And if they are present, they can actually germinate and growth can resume inside of the can. Okay, and then the idea is, if you were the unfortunate person to buy that can and eat the food, you would be consuming the microorganism. But looky here. Clostridium botulinum not only makes endospores, but also makes a toxin that's harmful. So that's the real concern there, and it could cause food poisoning and other illnesses. Originally, botulinum or botulism was actually known as a sausage disease. Sausage disease. Yeah, back in the old days, they would grind up meats and stuff them within animal intestines, and then tie up the ends, and in order to preserve the meats that are inside. Well, under those conditions, they didn't have autoclaves back then, and the endospores would germinate inside of those sausage casings, and then people would actually would eat the sausage, and then they would get poisoned by the toxin. All right, here's a fun piece of trivia for you. It's about the history of canning. Like, where did that concept come from? taking foods and like sealing them up inside of a vessel. Like, what? Where did that idea come from? Well, supposedly it was Napoleon Bonaparte. That French leader that, during his various military campaigns where his armies were, venturing out, they would have to forage for food. They just can't bring everything with them. But then, the Russians are famous for, withdrawing and, burning everything so that invading armies had nothing for food. And so, that affected Napoleon, and so he actually offered a prize. He offered a prize for someone who could figure out how to preserve food for his advancing armies that they could take with them on these various campaigns. And so that led to the very first canned food. But it wasn't made out of, the can wasn't made out of metal. So what do you think it was made of? I think, so instead of a metal can, they had, I think, French. It was glass. It was glass. So yeah, they had a bunch of wine bottles. Stuff them full with meat. Cook them up. Put it over heat. Stop around, right? Put a cork on top. That was your very first canned food. And it worked. All right, last item for today. We learned about moist heat, how that steam has more more energy than what you find in the boiling water. But then we have dry heat. Like the flame of your Bunsen burner is a perfect example of dry heat there. Incineration, things get burned. Like Blessing, I think you were just burning. I think your clothespin ignited there. It's so hot. so yeah, you get that charring as things burn off, and you'll get more of that. As we do more labs, and you're always burning off the bacteria that are on your wire loop. It will accumulate ash, but that's normal. All right, so we're going to actually end here. And then next time we should be able to finish up chapter number 5, and then you're doing a great job with your taking notes, and you'll be able to upload your notes on the Blackboard site here. All right, everyone, have a great weekend.